Hello and welcome to The Feminine Force, where we're illuminating your call. Thanks for joining us today. We're here to create a beautiful space for mums and women so that you can all feel safe and come and learn maybe some new things that might help you out. We have Ali Canavan stepping in for the beautiful Caroline Murphy-Bennis today. Ali is a speaker, author, coach, mum extraordinaire. Hi, Ali. Thank you so much for stepping in today.
You're so welcome. I'm so thrilled to be here, Lisa, and for sitting in for Caroline today. So I just want to send her big hugs as well. I'm so excited because today we have one of my favorite human beings right now who just brought out the most amazing book. And this is the second time I've had the pleasure and the honor of speaking to her. And it's Dr. Sherry Campbell, who is a licensed psychologist. She specializes in helping healthy people cut ties with the toxic people in their lives. So she's nationally recognized expert on family estrangement, an inspirational speaker, and former radio host of the Dr. Sherry Show on the BMM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. She's a social media influencer, and I strongly, strongly recommend after this interview today that you go follow her for amazing social media and support, and regularly featured media expert. Her new book, Adult Survivors of Toxic Family Members, is a must read. So you're so welcome. You're so welcome, Dr. Sherry. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be there. I want to mention I have a new podcast. So that's called Therapy Sessions, Cutting Toxic Family Ties. And Allison shared with me that it's ranked very high in Ireland, correct?
Yes.
So I gave a shout out to all of my Irish followers after hearing that from you. So yeah, we're ranked worldwide, and it's nice to be in that platform to give voice to this very private, seemingly hidden epidemic.
And it's interesting because when I saw your book, I almost was looking at the title in disbelief. I was like, really? This is a book? And because it's very personal to me, and the whole idea coming from Ireland, and I think why your podcast resonates so much in Ireland is because we're brought up in a culture of just brush it under the carpet, forgive and forget, blood is thicker than water, and I could go on and on and on. And, you know, I was brought up in a family where you got into a lot of trouble as a child if you spoke about your family. Like, my grandmother would be very much concerned about what the neighbors think. So, you know, it was kind of like we all played keeping up appearances. I'm sure there's a lot of people who can like resonate with the keeping up appearances and pretending everything's okay. But what happens with that is that, you know, people end up in incredibly toxic situations, you know, walking on eggshells. A lot of people have narcissists for parents. I mean, the list goes on. And we can feel trapped in our lives, unable to move further, than where we are, because as soon as we speak up, because everybody is so heavily involved in this loop and this story, right? And fear is running the show that as soon as one person speaks up, everybody usually backs up the parent or the narcissist, which is kind of fascinating to witness when you step out of it, you know? So it was a very brave move to release your book, and it stayed, is it still number one in Amazon?
It was there for, a little over 2 months.
Yeah.
When you think about how many books are released every day, I was so happy about that. You know, I don't really write books for that, but it certainly feels good, especially because I will actually on the covers of my book put cutting ties. It's amazing to me how many people reach out in private that want to give a review, but they're afraid to have their name attached to the review because experts really don't want to push so hard against the cult and culture. And I don't really feel like I'm pushing hard. I'm giving a solution. But I would say that cutting ties is misunderstood and it lacks a certain definition. It gets confused, in my opinion, with cancel culture.
So what is the definition then that you would give for cutting ties?
So
Like, how
cutting
would you say that?
ties for me wasn't an impulsive moment of having a moment of dislike for a family member, where I spontaneously blocked that person for a game, then wanting to smear that person for a game. And then because the game would be, I want you to come back. Most of us that have cut ties, we've honestly probably been cut off first. And that was the role that I was cut off. And I didn't have any more tools to mend the fence. And so what for me, cutting ties was more about resolve, that I didn't have any more energy to continue to mend a fence that I knew would just be broken again and again. So I did it for me, and I did it to put a loving fortress around my spirit and my person where I could feel safe. It has nothing to do with malice or hate. Now they cut me off out of malice and hate to provoke abandonment, to get me begging back. And I don't really need to do that anymore. It became very clear to me, and that clarity, I just knew it was done. I didn't have any more room or space in my heart. It also took me 45 years. Not a bad moment.
And do you also think that personal growth, because for me personally, doing the work on myself through the years, continuing to show up for myself and do the work, because I had lots of that where it would be threats if you don't behave in a certain way, and then love is withheld and then it's given back. And, we're trained in that from when we're very, very young, from when we're kids. And something just kind of clicked in me where I was like, I felt secure enough in myself. So you touched on safety there.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, safety has been a lifelong issue. Dysregulated nervous system, not feeling safe, right? And feeling safe in all the most unsafe places, because that's what I was trained to do. So
I understand that.
It was interesting for me to finally say, okay, no more. But there was a terror moment in that too, right? Like stepping away from that was kind of, it was really difficult. But one thing I've learned, and the one thing that really resonated with me from your book, is that stepping away from toxicity, it can be family, it can be relationship, it can be friendship, it can be anything. But one of the things I've really learned from your work is that you have to step away from the toxicity in order to heal. And that's something that's not spoken about. It really is not spoken about at all, because we have a load of people trying to mend relationships. And when we think about it, it's like the poison is there, right? And you get to leave the poisonous environment for a while and go out and do your work or do whatever you're doing. And then you immediately come back into the poison again. So it's so true. How can you heal when you're constantly taking a dose, another dose, another dose?
You can't. I think that what I tried, because the literature and the research was falling short in so many ways. Boundaries, books on boundaries are written for a healthy person to another healthy person. They weren't written in the way of, well, then how do you set boundaries with a toxic person? It's completely different. That boundary setting is wildly different. I also feel that I did not feel safe when I cut ties. I just was done. It was a very different feeling than safe for me. It was done. It's an odd feeling. There was no more. I couldn't do more. And me being an overachiever, probably to try and gain love and to access love or validation, when I'm out, it was really one of my first experiences of actually being done, because I don't really know a space of done. I know set another goal. So that feeling for me didn't feel safe. It just felt very clear. It just was clear. I was in quite a bit of fear for my first couple of years, Allison. As you know, I sort of sat at the door with my ear glued to the door of where my family was, because what I didn't know is, in not mending the fence, how sadistic and vicious they were going to become to abuse me back in. So I stayed stuck there, and there was this life out yonder. I didn't even know was there, because I was wanting to know how to protect myself in this realm, because I'd never been here. It's like in Stranger Things, I feel like I was in the upside down world. And I have the where they get stuck and they don't know how to cope there. I was there and couldn't figure out what happiness or life or trust in people would be like. So I stayed over here because I just didn't want to wander and have my back turned and get annihilated somehow. And so that was a process for me of becoming safer.
And that's interesting you say that, because that's exactly how I felt for a couple of years. In fact, the year running up to cutting ties, I felt, so paranoid, of everything and everyone. And, not really, like, everyone around me, I was suspicious of, right? Because they call in flying monkeys from everywhere, they bring in everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. They bring in your friends, they bring in anybody that they can think of, right? And they tell their story too. So you can feel like you're on an island on your own, very much so. And that's also part of their plan as well, is to isolate you so much that you're far too scared to make a break or to get strong enough to do anything. And it's all part of the game. And even for the year afterwards, I was like, I remember the phone would ring and I'm like, will I answer that? Or are they ringing because they were asked to? Or if a message would come in, I'd be like, have they been sent in to me to try and get information about me? So I really resonate with that. But if somebody's listening today, and this might be the very, very first time that they're actually hearing a conversation like this, what would you say to someone that's going, oh my gosh, this is my life?
I thank God I wrote as a little girl. I sort of felt like a ghost in my life, sort of watching it, but the reality of it was so harsh that I didn't really like connecting too much into my body. So I had stuffed animals and Little House on the Prairie. And I found my way into a fantasy family and ways to have permanent object relations with my stuffed animals. Annie, the movie and the songs, Hard Knock Life, The Sun Will Come Out, those things sort of kept me grounded to maybe the narrative about myself that perhaps I thought would be true, fighting against a false narrative. So if someone is hearing this today, what I know has helped me to stay very healthy is that I kept writing myself back into existence so that I wouldn't really lose myself to the false narrative. And I know not everyone writes in a journal or whatnot, but whatever way that you can stay connected to what you know to be true, I think that probably really helped me to not become toxic myself. I was externalizing it at least somewhere. And I did end up in therapy at 16. Because as I became more of a woman, my mother did not see me as her daughter as much as competition. And I stopped eating. Thank God I'm emetophobic, because truly I'd rather be stabbed in the face than throw up. But I don't feel like I stopped eating because I felt like a weight issue. I think I just needed control over something or anything. So if I ate good food, according to what my mind said good food was, I was a good girl. And it disempowered my mother's ability to define me. I'm not recommending this as a coping skill, by the way. I did have a therapist and I did write a lot in a journal, but never ever thought I would write a book. It was never in my intention when I got my PhD. I just love the privacy of working with people. And I would also say that you get to set the pace on how you can connect your body to your truth in maybe some gentle doses. We all sort of disconnect a little bit when we're being abused. To be in the body is an incredibly harsh reality. All of our feelings live there. When I look at the divine feminine, or what I have read on the feminine, but when we're in our heads, we're very masculine. When we're in our bodies, we're very feminine. And the body was a painful place for me to be. And so it's always, I think, a process of reconnection. but I think you need to set the pace. I learned when I was on the other side of the door, no expert had written about my questions. What do you do when they die? What do you do when everyone around you is saying, I know, but it's your mom, or she surely didn't mean it that way, or, why do other people to be okay in their life need to be good with my family dynamic? Like, why is this such a powerful thing for you? I don't get it. Fix your life. I'm doing my thing. I feel pretty good. So I had a cultural kickback I didn't know I was going to have at all.
And
And
it's
I'm like, why
interesting.
do I have to explain? And why is it important to these people?
And I feel now, so after the years, it's really interesting because after the live we did on my Instagram,
Yes.
I had people reach out to me, and I won't say who they were, but I had people close to me, people close to my family. I had friends that I haven't really spoken to in Ireland, and every single one of them wrote to me and said, I'm so sorry, I fully understand now exactly why you did what you did. And I just remember reading those messages, not that I needed the validation, but what I realized in that moment was it wasn't about me. It was actually triggering a recognition that they have, that this is what's happening to me too. And if I acknowledge that it's happening to you, I have to look at it in my life. And that's not something people are willing to do. It's like, if we can all just play the game, right? It would just be much easier because my mom is like your mom, or my auntie or my something is like yours. And if you're making this break and you're taking this stand, it shines a light on me. And it's similar to, I'm sober 7 years, right? And when I got sober, people who were still drinking didn't want to be around me, not because they didn't want to be around me, but because I was shining a light on a lot of their behavior that a lot of people I hung around with would love to give up alcohol. And like, I posted something about being 7 years sober recently, and the amount of messages I got from people saying, so sorry I didn't speak to you for the first 3 years. I just desperately want to get sober myself. I'm still not sober, but hopefully one day I will. So it's interesting that most of the time people's reactions are based in their own fear, and their own insecurity.
Yeah, I would say almost always. And yet I do detail quite a bit in my book that there are a lot of the flying monkeys, or I call them messengers, in my book. But these middlemen, they can play an incredibly damaging role in your pain, jumping into that smear campaign. And I had a woman come back many years later and say that, and she played a very destructive role in the narrative about me, and she had apologized. And what I recognized in that moment, that I could appreciate that she was apologizing. But what I had said to her was, I really hope that apologizing to me does something for you. Yeah. Because the pain that you've caused me, it's not really repairable by an apology, but I appreciate the effort. But because it isn't going to do anything for me, I am hoping that this is as genuine as it gets for you, and that you can take something from this for you. And she heard that message loud and clear, because my idea of forgiveness is that it led me into more abuse. So I had to come and Allison redefine forgiveness as acceptance, which to me, and maybe it's just semantics, but to me, acceptance was a far deeper process, because acceptance is a little bit more like swallowing sand. You're accepting something that you've been fighting a denial about, such as my mother does not love me, never has.
That's amazing. I see that emotional. So the things that I've learned is that it's all about our emotional reclamation, like reclaiming those, that the feelings in us. And like what you shared before is, like the capacity to actually feel and go into the body is so challenging for someone that's been through trauma like you and you guys, and that is, I was listening to something the other day, our nervous system can't hold that space. And for me, that's why I think it's so important to have a safe person around you, because if you come into contact with somebody that can hold emotional presence, then that gives you the resources in that moment to feel what you're feeling. Because it's almost like when the feelings are that overwhelming, we simply don't have the resources inside of us to be able to feel them alone. But the other person that's with us, for them to have the capacity to be in an emotional presence, which a lot of people can't do because they're being activated, right? Their stuff is being activated the whole time. So it's like finding these people.
I literally just had this conversation with a friend yesterday, and we were talking about just something we witnessed in a cafe, right? Where, you know, I think the kid was probably about 5 and was having a meltdown. But like, to watch the parent was going, stop. And I was saying to my friend, isn't it interesting? It's never really about the child, what the child is doing. It's the parent going, I don't know what to do with my own emotions, and I don't know what to do with this emotion, so just stop it. So it's always like, because we haven't been brought up to speak fluently with our body, with emotions, we have absolutely no idea. Like, I had no idea. So of course, the most normal thing for me was to become depressed, because repressing all of my emotions, with chronic anxiety, and then addictions, right? Because like, when I drank, I was like, oh, like a second of relief from all of this, right? But it's interesting that then I went in to become a meditation teacher and sat on 10-day silent retreats. Now, that's not something I would actually willingly say to anybody who was where I am, because the first 10-day silent retreat I sat on, the first day, I felt this wave of nausea, and I ended up throwing up and nearly passing out. And it was like, in that moment, all of the trauma that had been sitting in my body suddenly went, oh, this is a nice opportunity, right?
Yeah.
We're all sitting in a room. I mean, you can say my body thought it was a safe space, but it didn't feel like that for me, right? And there was no real space, because I remember training in UCLA and having this conversation with some of the professors, because I was like, people go on these 10-day silent retreats, right? And yes, the meditation teachers are trained, but there was nobody really there that day to help me understand what was happening. Like, it was just like, we'll sit with you and you're throwing up and this is happening. And then if you wouldn't mind going back and sitting on the cushion, right? And sitting back into another 6 hours of meditation. And what was happening with my body is that everything that had been buried forever suddenly decided that it was going to come up. And that can be really terrifying. And so it's understandable why people don't want to do the work, right? Because it's like, oh, I don't know, that could be like opening Pandora's box. I think I'll just go this way. Thanks, but no thanks.
The comment that
it's easier though. I've been thinking about this, because we do have this belief that it's so big to do this work, you know, but isn't it worse to actually keep feeling those feelings for the rest of your life? Like, if you actually logically look at it, you know, actually, and it's not like you've got to marinate in it. It's really just really owning what's happened and taking responsibility for it and moving through it, you know. And that is so much easier than living with it for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? And yet we don't logically look at it like that.
The sense of freedom I have now, like, I sometimes go, oh my gosh, if I had known this freedom was available to me 20 years ago, like, what was I doing? Do you know what I mean? It was almost like I had myself tied in chains and I jailed myself in some ways. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Now I'm like, oh, I just feel so free. I feel like I've been given, but it does require us to go through like a couple of dark nights of the soul and, you know, death and rebirth processes. Like, I feel like personally I've been through so many deaths and rebirths in myself, and I'm allowing this stuff to come up. And absolutely, like, is the work worth it? 100%. 100%. But, you know, for some people, it requires to let go. The whole letting go process is something like anybody that lives in this modern world. That's, you know, my Buddhist teacher used to say to me years ago, God rest him, Sargon Rinpoche, I'd walk into the room, I was only in my 20s, for a retreat, and he'd say, oh, here she comes. And he'd do this. And when I was in my 20s, I was like, I don't really understand why he's saying that about me, you know what I mean? He's saying, here she comes, she's hanging on so tightly, you know. Now at 44, I was like, oh, I wish he was alive so I could call him and go, I get it. It's taken me 44 years. Actually, I get it now. Yes, I'm with you. And that's what it was, this fear of letting go, right? So I was just this all the time. And actually, when we let go, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, you know, I'm working with 40 clinical patients in 4 days. I'm kind of insane. I definitely provide that space. I will say that in the new book, I also, well, one, I think that we get to pace our own healing. I think that it is wise for us to control the psyche and to take our time. I think that being mindful or patient in a process allows you to not have to repeat a whole lot of it. And so forward is a pace. It's one of my favorite things. It's not about speed, it's about direction. Forward is a pace. And I think that there's times that maybe we do sit and marinate in certain issues a little longer than others, depending on what the triggers are or what those triggers are connected to other triggers. And, you know, that healing is never healed. And I differentiate that in my book as well. But I will say that the real goal I have for my patients, knowing now that I've been and reached this space, because there was no footprints in the snow in front of me. So I'm out there blindly hoping I don't step in a rabbit hole. And I stepped in many. So, but I actually came to a space where I recognized that at the 1 yard line, I was the only one there, peeling myself up off the ground and hugging and kissing myself back to life, because ultimately at the 1 yard line, no one can do that for you. And I give people credit for my healing that really didn't do the work. It's like, if you look at a therapist, I see these people, they read my books, I adore them. I love my patients. I don't pathologize them. They're a human being. We connect human to human. But what I want them to know is that the best way to be held is to be held within your own sense of self and truth, however you define that. And it is a journey to get there. And we do need others always, but at the 1 yard line, it will always and only ever be you. You have to do your work. The therapist can make that space, open that door, but the client has to walk through that door. Then they come back and they report what they found on that beautiful journey or painful journey of wherever they've been. And I just orient them to their location. And we talk about forward being a pace. And I'm reintroducing themselves to the safety that has really always been inside of them, or they wouldn't be in my office.
I love
that separation. I always look at that as the separation that we have from the source of our true self, you know, and I'd love to ask you about this, like that, seeing somebody that has had experiences where they're so separate from the power of, you know, what they have inside them, that safe space inside them to go to and being able to access that. When that separation is so great and those behaviors and experiences have been so extreme, sometimes do you ever find that a person goes, I can't feel that in me. I can't find that safe space. Do you ever find that it's just so hard and that they have no memory? Like most people might have a memory of a time where you just felt really safe and at ease, or a lot of love or a lot of awe, even just awe going out in nature. But do you ever find that some people have so much trauma that they can't even recall a time that they felt that, and so find it hard to access that place?
Yes, I was one of those. And so I had to find it in other ways. I do believe, I say often, that I had paper parents. I found myself through writing. I started writing in a diary, you know, very young. And I look back now and I think I had to write myself into existence so that I wouldn't lose myself or disintegrate into a narrative. I have patients who can't recall memory from certain times in their life. And I'm not one of those that I believe we need to chase repressed memory. I believe in the psyche. I believe in its intelligence. And I believe if those memories are to be recalled, they will be. Plus, what I see in front of me in terms of triggers or fears or behavioral patterns tells me everything I need to know about what happened during that time in their life. And it's always based in fear. I think that psychology for a while there was really getting out of control on repressed memory, almost forcing these things out of people. And I just really believe in the intelligence of the psyche. And if there's something in there that needs to be so protected it doesn't come out, then I'm going to certainly trust that, because I need to replace whatever's there with another defense to help carry it. And I don't believe all memories need to be recalled. And I have many, many people who don't have safe memories in the family, but every person I've worked with, every person found a way to some level of safety, or they wouldn't be alive. They would have taken care of that. So and I always say, you're here. You're here. What got you here?
Yeah.
Whether you dissociated some, or you learned to kind of hide out and be invisible, or you cut ties, or however you did it. I think those skill sets are useful to healing. I don't really always judge defenses as negative. I judge them all as have been helpful at some point in time. Maybe like me being a pleaser, for some point in time, I believe I survived better because of it. But as an adult per se, it didn't work well for me. It actually got me into some abusive stuff, and I had to work through that. But I'm thankful for like the time that I wasn't eating. It did get me out of the scope of her. So I just think it's all smart. And I think if we can look at it from a fifth floor viewpoint, rather than a rush to heal the pain, and you can just unpack it at your own pace, then I think healing is safe, and it keeps you actually connected to the body, because it's not such a harsh place to land.
We call it the emerging process, like being in the emerging process. And yeah, because it is, isn't it? That emerging process as it comes up.
Important conversation, because we kind of moved into what I consider, and it's all personal, based on personal experience, quite a toxic trait of, forcing people down the path of, figuring out what happened. Like, because I used to say I had no memories at all of my childhood, right? And I went to see a couple of people who were like, well, we have to get those memories back, and we have to get them back because we have to figure out what happened. And I remember sitting in this therapist's office in Ireland, and something in that room that day, it was the last session I ever had with them actually, something in the room that day said to me, this is not your path. Trust yourself, trust your path. And I had been well on the road to doing the work. And there was this rush, like you said, there was this rush to find something, but I knew that it wasn't just one thing, right? It's not like we go back to one memory and then, oh, look, we just fixed it all. It's amazing. And I, over the last few years, have come to the conclusion myself that's pretty similar to yours, that maybe we don't have to get all those memories back. Maybe we're designed in such a spectacular fashion. Maybe the creator knew exactly what it was doing. God knew what was going on, when like there's a reason why we don't have those memories. And I got some memories back, which helped me to, when I went into the narrative of, am I insane? Am I making some stuff up? Because that happens, right? Where you start to wake up and go, am I the one what? Is it me? And then, in those moments in my work, I did get memories back, and I did get stuff back. It was like, no, this is actually what happened, right? You're not making it up. This is definitely what happened. But I think this is an important conversation to have, because I see it also in the wellness world, which I'm in, where people are, going on ayahuasca retreats every couple of weekends. And I've had this conversation with a couple of friends of mine who, it's kind of like using something to, again, go back. And it's like, I had this conversation with a friend a few weeks ago where I said, you've just got to be really mindful that it's not the next ayahuasca retreat is going to give me the answer, because what are you doing every day? It's a process, and I think the healing is never done. It's not like, oh, in 90 days or a year, we're done, right? That's it. That's going to be my journey. We're always evolving. We're always changing. We're always growing. It's just a part of being in this human form, right?
Yeah. I know that whole hallucinogen thing is popular in Hollywood and some other places. But I do believe from a very natural health perspective that we don't need anything external to us. Now, I've worked in state mental hospitals. I recognize the need for psychotropic medications for the Axis 1 disorders. I've seen that. That is unlike anything that you see out in the real world when you work on a lockdown unit. There are also people that are horribly thrown away. And it's a disaster in mental health, the way that it's handled. But what I've learned is that really nothing outside of me made my healing any deeper. Honestly, the deepest healing I've had is when I've been the most raw, the most terrified, the most vulnerable, and the most exposed, and the deepest in question of myself and my ability to get up and keep going. I just think that I believe that living life on life's terms, which would then mean I have trouble with texts that say there's a utopia somewhere at the end of the fairy tale or the heartache. Really bad things happen to good people. That's a fact. I think because I lived in such a dark space that I reached for information. I think information and education is incredibly healing. I turned Little House on the Prairie for many years was my fantasy family. Always will be thankful to Ma and Pa, the fantasy ones. At least it gave me an idea of maybe what it would look like. It helped me create a narrative of what I wanted it to look like. And I didn't realize I was using my stuffed animals to parent myself and to also parent them. So I got a lot of practice as a little girl. If I look back on it, daydreaming was super important for me. Writing my feelings down helped me connect to my body and to who I am. But I believe that also anything external, any substance, whether it's ayahuasca, LSD, whatnot, I've seen some people in state mental hospitals that take one hit of that stuff and they never come out of a psychotic state. So there is, to each their own. But I just think that real healing doesn't need anything. I think it's available. I think it hurts. And it's just, I love the simplicity of life is that it hurts. You feel gutted. It's not fun being in a body or a spirit that's feeling that type of way. I used to judge my healing process, and Allison, I don't know if you got to that part of the book yet, but I thought that if the healing didn't feel good, that I wasn't doing it. It was almost like the way that positive psychology and other aspects of mental health come off is that you should feel this empowerment and you should have all the things. And I'm sitting here going, I would really rather truly jump off a cliff than feel this way. Like I must be doing something wrong.
And that part helped me to turn towards myself and love the part of myself that actually did want to jump off a cliff. And in the not too recent past, right, I had one of those moments. So that was interesting because like you, like I was through all the work or whatever through the years, there was a time I went through, like if I wasn't doing gratitude and feeling good, then all of these things that I was doing wasn't working. And what I realized over time is that actually being in that deep, dark pain is a huge part.
Yeah. And I learned to befriend it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that in the darkest moments.
And loving it.
I have found,
loving it.
I didn't love it. I can't say that I loved it, but I found myself raw, naked, but alive. Like I was there. And those are really precious moments now. I didn't understand them sometimes. I was going through a therapist, didn't understand. I didn't want to be given a label or diagnosed as depressed. You know what? I was freaking sad. And I had a lot of reason to be sad. But I really wasn't allowed to say why I was sad because then I was telling on people. And I might have been wrong. And I would prefer to believe my parents than myself because they're the authority and the power holder. And so, part of healing is going through some very dark spaces. And I just think that there's value in the valley. Yes. And be patient. We don't want to be patient. We're like, this is really uncomfortable and I want to get out. And it's like, well, I don't want to stop in the middle of chemo, and that's what I tell my patients, like, we're kind of in the middle of chemo. You're going to have some good days and bad days, but let's just journey through and see what other layers, come up. And again, I think that healing is a journey that I'm passionate about because it needs to be respected in its own right. I always say, don't push the river. It's like, be like water, eventually it erodes rock. So whatever is hard on the inside, if you can really work to flow with it in your psyche and just tell yourself, parent yourself, like, just be patient. This will pass, but feel, deal, heal,
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds like it's the switch in the mind. Well, this is sort of what helped me too, but it sounds like what you're talking about is this switch that we have where rather than resisting, because we feel uncomfortable, it feels horrible, and our default position is to resist, trying to figure it out, like get into our head and analyze it rather than be with it. But it's almost like seeing it differently, seeing it as the opportunity, and just practicing that whole way of just being with something rather than resisting it. It's like it's so key.
Resistance, respect your resistance. We get so mean to ourselves. Respect the resistance. There's something about maybe the healthy part of justice that's trying to work its way through our system. And so I just think self-respect is learned through respecting and not being so mean or critical. If you're hurting, you're healing. I mean, it's not about staying in the hurt. That's very different. But I just think there's so many ways to respect the whole process and not label it.
Yeah.
I think if you're running off to do all kinds of external, you're not going to heal in a weekend seminar. I mean, I know they look magical. I know. I saw one the other day, like, heal your CPTSD. These are my 10 courses and you will heal your CPTSD. And I'm like, oh, she must be giving lobotomies. Right? Because the amygdala and hippocampal areas, unless you remove those, then you're always going to have some CPTSD. The brain is built in a beautiful file system. And so why would you want to get rid of it? Learn to work with it. I feel like we need to meet our healing halfway.
Yeah. And it's like, for me, it's about patience, it's about presence, it's about self-compassion, which was something that, I find it's very difficult for people. We live in a culture where people are very critical. They're very comparison orientated with each other, and they're looking to someone else. And I was the person, I was just laughing there when you were saying it, because I remember about 11 years ago, I saw a retreat in Ireland, and I was like, it was a weekend forgiveness retreat. And I thought, brilliant, I'll go spend the weekend forgiving my son's father, and then I'll come back on Monday and boom, it'll be done. Anyway, that was the weekend retreat that showed me how much work had to be done. And
I mean, I respect everyone who's trying to help. I also feel it's important not to mislead. Yes. Because hope is such a magical, sparkly, innocent emotion. And everything takes time, and it takes humility, and it takes just a tremendous amount of resilience. And I just think that something about that process can be very misunderstood, and then people turn against themselves, like I did. I must not be healing the right way. Well, you can try every formula of healing that you want, but you're not going to be healed. If it's there, it's there. Yeah. And I've learned to just be like, why do I want to get rid of all this? Why not just pull it in and be with it? It's a part of my personality. It's a part of what makes me me. It just is. I don't really need to be getting rid of all of it. I was trying to throw all the trash out for a while, and I was mistaking treasures for trash.
Beautiful.
Dr. Sherry, I work with a lot of mums. And I think the thing with mums, when they have daughters and they see what's going on in their daughter's world, and a lot of daughters now have, teenage girls have so many mental illnesses and so many body image issues. And like, there's this incredible just pandemic at the moment that I feel, because I've got a 24-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old daughter. And in that 10 years, there's just been so much difference as a result of the fact that now there's this thing called social media that is, with them 24/7 if they don't have any boundaries around their phone. But one of the things that I've noticed is that there is no way through. There is no fighting this system. There's no fighting social media. There's no way to actually, force that to change. But the solution is in focusing on the connection and on using that emerging process. And like you're saying, it's not trying to get rid of it. It's actually like, let's use this moment between us to create more connection and more love. Let's use what's happening to feel more empowered in ourselves, because that is the solution. Because that also is a transferable skill, right? If you learn how to be in that moment and find your groundedness, your center, your peace in that moment, that skill can be transferred to any other future moments. So for me, I think there's so much frustration that mums especially are facing trying to fix their daughters, and and they're not good enough to be activated.
I have a 17-year-old daughter, and I don't do anything with her phone. It's up to her. I don't want to invade her privacy or her independence. I think there's far too much of that. I accept social media for what it is, and I have an open door policy for conversation. She had, this story's kind of funny. So my boyfriend had brought out this salt. It had fig in it, but it looked like an egg. And so she thought it was a vibrator. Dying. She's like, Mom, on Instagram, on some of these Instagram, it's on there. She goes, because she had this face, and I was like, what's going on? And got in the car. She's like, Mom, I thought Scott brought out a vibrator. And I was like, what? I was like, what is that thing? She's like, yeah, Mom. She's like, it's not like I'm looking for it. And I'm like, listen, honey, I trust you. And this is my point of this story is I believe in her and I trust her.
Yes.
And so we ended up in a conversation, and 17-year-olds really, really are sort of shy on these topics. And so I was dying laughing because that was so funny that she thought it was a vibrator. And she's like, no, Mom, seriously. I'm like, okay, find it. Send it to me. I want to see what this vibrator is. I'm actually curious. And so it ended up putting us into a really sweet space of having fun, rather than why are you looking at vibrators, or me accusing her, or me going at her, or her feeling like if she did think that she couldn't tell me. I think that I'm mother, but I'm also mama, and mama's fun. I'm her North Star, and I recognize the real magical connection because it's open. I think sometimes moms get far too scared trying to control this external world. One of my favorite texts spiritually is the I Ching. And I consult the I Ching, especially in times of crisis. It's the book of changes. I love elements. I love science. I love lots of different sciences. And it's included in many of the sciences I study, human design being one of those as well. So I love going with what's there. We need to allow our daughters to speak about boys or sex or questions. I mean, my God, if anyone's going to advise her, I'd like it to be me. And I made it so playful, and we were rolling. We were laughing so hard that she thought that was a vibrator. I was deceased. We were dying and having fun. One thing that I see, a lot of moms reach out to me afraid that they're going to be their mom to their daughter. And in doing this, I find that in trying to not be their mom, they become very coercive or controlling or too enabling in some other ways. And so they're so focused on the parenting that they're missing the child. So my advice is very simple. Focus on enjoying your children. If you want to be a good parent, enjoy your children. They're not things. They're not properties. It's not a proprietal ownership. It's not about obey. This life, I would rather have my daughter have ultimate freedom under the guise of me being disciplined of her around the appropriate things, cleaning her room and doing her homework and her grades and things like that. I can't control social media, but I can raise a kid with good character, and I can raise a child to know herself. And I hope she fails, and I hope she tells me, and I hope we can work through those things. She's also watched me go through many different, very challenging times in my life as a single mom of her. I have cried and fallen apart in front of my child, thinking that this was the worst thing I can do. And my therapist was like, this is life.
Mm-hmm.
Better to prepare her for life. I didn't use her as my therapist, but
Yeah.
I have broken and shattered in front of my child a good 3 or 4 times over my lifetime. So of raising her. And I, again, would beat myself up at that at first, but it's right. It's life. And these things are going to happen to her. Watching me get up, watching me go on, whether I'm dazed and confused for a little bit, probably is more to her than any form of verbal parenting that I can give her. I think that it's really not about what you say to your children. I think they do what you do.
Yes.
If you get, oh, mom, I thought that was a vibrator, and as a mother, you freak out about that, you need to look at yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I am just like, can we take the last 4 minutes and put it everywhere? Like, seriously, like, honestly, because I feel like I'm like, oh, we so needed to hear.
My daughter would kill me. She'd be like, Mom, why are you telling these people? I thought it was.
I'm the tiger. No, I'm joking. Social media.
I have to be careful though of that because, you know, like when you're dealing with mums and daughters, I have to be so aware what I share.
Yeah,
you know, and because you're just sharing. Yeah, there's another person in your story, right? And I've noticed the same thing too, Sherry. You know, like my daughter has a lot of freedom, but she has boundaries over it. Like I don't even use the word boundaries actually, but there are things that she does that are respectful to her place in the world and where she is. But she, compared to a lot of people, she has a lot of freedom. Same. But I also see that she's very joyful. Like she's yes. I can see that she feels happy because she doesn't have all of these forces on her that I think a lot of kids do. And I only have to ask her things and she just does them because that the connection is the thing. If you've got the connection, they really want to be working with you.
Yes. And you know, really control can never give you connection.
Okay.
Disconnects.
Will never lead to connection, nor will pride ever lead you into progress. Yeah. You know, we're human beings. I don't own her. This amazing universe gave me the most magical, darling angel of a child. I'm so happy that I get to have the honor of loving her in this life. You know, I didn't see happy faces when I walked in a room as a child. I didn't see elation. I didn't see that. And I know how happy she knows that I am, that she's in my life. Do you know how important laughter is from mom to daughter? Deceased laying over your face, laughing. You know, parents need to chill out and be ridiculous sometimes. You know, we need to, we have it's too much seriousness is not fun. You're not going to control your kid into a connection. Connection is about open space. I have a big frame for her. It started off little, and as she grows, the frame grows. I just keep her in the darn frame, you know?
Yeah.
But I do feel that she deserves a secret garden of privacy. I've never gone through her phone. That would be like my mom. There's my mom read my journals. She has lots of friends from all over the world. When you trust your child, they feel like they want to uphold that trust. Yes. You're not going to get it by controlling them and constantly communicating that you don't trust them. Where have you been? What are you doing? I've got moms that nearly stalk their children with the apps that do the location. Well, those are about a football field off, by the way. Yeah. So, you know, I just think that if you really want to be a good mom, enjoy your kid.
And trust yourself, isn't it? Like it's the mum's capacity to do her work so that she knows how to trust herself, and then she can actually then be trusting the child. Like I just see that as such a thing that comes from within us, you know, like that.
And I want to go back to it because during my healing journey, I say to my clients now, where's the joy? Where's the joy? It all seems very hard to me. Do you know, like, where's the fun? Where's the joy? And that has been something that I have had to be conscious of the last couple of years too, right? Taking this all very seriously. And like, I would ring a friend and say, you know, I had to go to bed early last night, not feeling great or whatever, you know, I'm not going through a good time. They say, where's James? I'm like, he's here. Do you think that's a good idea? Yeah, because he gets to see. I'm not asking him, like, what really was very poignant when you said, I'm not asking her to be my therapist. And I think we've got this kind of really bizarre way of looking at things now, where we're so afraid to expose our kids to anything almost. Like, it's kind of gone to.
And guess what? They're going to leave home.
Yeah.
And they're unexposed. I mean, let's just go for it, Sister Fran.
It's interesting that it's like they know what's going on. Do you not think energy speaks? They know when you're not feeling great.
They do know. And when you're down, if I could just add something, reassurance is very important. When they see their power holder really down, my daughter will be like, Mom, are you okay? And I'll say, yes. I am okay. I am sad. I am grieving. I'm going through the things, but your mom, I'm okay. I'm going to get up and go to work. I'm going to trudge through the day. Every day when I've been in pain, are you okay? She hugs me. Why is that wrong? This is human. And she now knows what to do when she's going to go through that. She's going to come to Mom, and I'm going to kiss and love her back to life. Get her back on her feet and tell her, remember when you saw me go through blank? Imagine hiding all that from your kids. Why? So you can have some image of perfection, and for who? You're actually emotionally unavailable then. You know, you don't need to lose your role because you're having a hard moment in life. It doesn't disempower you to be human. So I think being emotionally available and transparent with your children is what makes them feel like they can tell you that, you know, all the funny things, and you can laugh. And there's that connection to me that just deepens, because whether I'm 80 and she's 50, I'm still her mom. Yeah. She's my baby. If she gets in a car accident or something and she's older, you don't think I'm going to be, that is my daughter for my life forever. I think too many moms use their heads and they become very masculine in their approach to parenting, because they think it's all about borders, discipline, criticism, image. You know, my kid is like, she's so gorgeous and she doesn't even see it, which I think is super charming and super cute. She's an introvert. She funny, witty, not into popularity, not into being half naked. And I live in California, man. This is one naked place. She is just not into it. She has no respect for it. And it's not because of anything that I have said or done at all, because I treat so many of those girls, and you know what? I love them too. And so I just think we all have to find our way. But I think values are unspoken. They're understated. They should be. You just live them. Shut your mouth and live it well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. We're almost up to the hour. Like, what a conversation. Holy dooly. Oh, wow, Sherry.
A little bit more about where they can find you, where they can access the podcast, where they can get your book.
So books are wherever books are sold. Sherry Campbell, PhD for Facebook. I do a lot there, very active. Dr.Sherry on Instagram. My podcast is doing so phenomenal, and that's on Apple. And it's Therapy Sessions, Cutting Toxic Family Ties. And then DrSherryCampbell.com is the website. So lots of places.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you both for having me on such a beautiful show.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. And thank you, Ali. It's been such a joy. Thank you so much.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Yes.